Hey everyone, Mr. Tweet here. When it comes to these interconnected market graphs, the one example I gave you, for instance, to begin with kind of the agave and tequila and oil and ethanol and super complicated example, right? Took place over a number of years. In AP Econ, if you're given a test question, it'll probably be a lot simpler. So what it would be is, they give you kind of three things and they would explain to you the relationships. This and this are substitutes, that and that are complements. This is an ingredient used to produce this, or maybe this and this are alternatives that producers could choose from, right? Pretty much those are your only choices for relationships that are going to affect one another. Now, what you want to do is it's going to give you one scenario and you're going to want to figure out what happens to price. So right here, I've got my example of skateboards, bicycles, and plywood, right? And what are the relationships here? Plywood is an ingredient or a resource used to make skateboards. Skateboards and bicycles are substitutes. So notice in this question right here, thing number one affects thing number two. Thing number two affects thing number three. Sometimes you will get a question where it will be like, they will, for instance, say that coffee and orange juice are substitutes. And then they'll say coffee and donuts are complements, right? So you'll have coffee, orange juice, donuts. And then they'll say demand increases for, or maybe they'll say something like the price of coffee beans goes up, decreasing the supply of coffee, right? So then you're going to have to figure out, how does coffee affect orange juice? How does coffee affect donuts? So sometimes it'll be like 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. Sometimes it'll go 1, 2, 3. It kind of depends on the scenario, how it's given to you. For today's assignment, I have a practice sheet where you're going to do a few of these and you'll see both in there. All right. So for this practice question right here, we've got plywood, we've got skateboards, we've got bikes, right? Now, let's say the scenario tells you, number one, again, to repeat, plywood is a resource used to make skateboards. Skateboards are a substitute for bicycles. And so then they say, all right, let's say that because of government taxes, the price of, let's just say the government decides to put a tax on plywood. All right. Government puts a tax on plywood. Well, first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go to our graph, our plywood graph, and we're going to want to look and see what that tax is going to do to the equilibrium. So taxes decrease supply. So I'm going to shift my supply to the left, put my little arrow in there, draw my new equilibrium like you practiced on Friday. P1, price goes up, quantity goes down. So when I decrease my supply, supply shifts to the left. That makes my price go up. It makes my quantity go down. So that means the price of plywood is increasing and it's harder to find because the quantity is going down because people are producing it less because of the tax, right? So what does this mean for skateboard producers or for the skateboard market, right? Well, as a skateboarder, I could care, I have no idea what's happening in the plywood market. I have no idea that the government even put a tax on plywood producers. All I know, right, as a consumer, is my desire for skateboards hasn't really changed because of this. But if I'm a skateboard producer, you better believe I know the price of plywood down to the cent, right? Because that's my bottom line. So if the price of plywood is going up and it's harder to find, what's that going to mean for skateboard producers? That means that they're going to produce less skateboards, right? Because the price of plywood going up is going to mean some people who used to make a profit making skateboards don't make a profit anymore and they go out of business or they switch to something else. So we're going to see fewer producers of skateboards because of that higher resource cost. So supply decreases to the left. Find my new equilibrium. Figure out what happened to price and quantity. All right. And we see here, we have price going up again. So now let's look at our third market, bicycles, right? How are bikes related in this? Well, bikes are related to skateboards, right? They're substitutes, right? Like Coke and Pepsi. Price of Coke goes up. What happens to Pepsi? More people want it. Demand increases, right? Price of skateboards goes up. More people are going to want bikes if they are substitutes. So what we'll see, right, is the demand for bikes increases because the price of skateboards was going up. Put my arrow in there. Put my new demand curve. Find my new equilibrium. Price goes up, quantity goes up because demand increased. So how you would see this on the AP test, right? If you were taking the micro test, it might be an FRQ, but on the macro test, how would you see this? You would see a multiple choice question that would give you the scenario and would say, this is plywood, this is skateboards, this is bikes. Plywood is a resource used to make skateboards. Bikes and skateboards are substitutes. Then they would say the government puts a tax on plywood. And then the question would be, what happens to the price and quantity of bikes? Right? You'd have to kind of work your way through that. You'd have to go from step A to B and B to C, and then you would get down here, price goes up, quantity goes up because the demand has increased for bikes. And so your multiple choice answers would be price goes up, quantity goes up, price goes down, quantity goes down, price goes up, quantity goes down, price goes down, quantity goes up, and it cannot be determined, right? Those are your 5 answer choices. And then you pick the right one based on your graph. So I got a worksheet for you guys to kind of practice this with. Really and truly, this is just more of the supply and demand practice that you guys did on Friday. Only now it's like, you got to get the right answer on one to lead you into the next, to get the right answer leading into the next. All right. So that is the kind of multiple interconnected markets. We only use 3, but it's showing us that larger idea of, whenever there's some sort of, whenever there's something that happens and it causes a chain in one market, it's likely going to end up with a chain reaction that affects other markets. So that's really the bigger idea that we're trying to find here. So anyways, if you have questions, you can see me during office hours. Again, there's that worksheet to kind of help you guys practice this. Sometimes, right, again, be on the lookout. Sometimes when we have our 3 graphs, sometimes number 1 is going to affect number 2 is going to affect number 3. Sometimes number 1 is going to affect number 2 and number 3. So you got to pay attention for that. The question will let you know, right? Is this related to this and then this related to this, or is this related to both? The question will let you know that. All right. So if you have questions, like I said, email me, office hours. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.